remember it wasn't as easy as I wanted to get it. We found very carefully, we were saying, how insane is it that we, at this stage in our lives, that these kids take on this endeavor? But we also understand that we don't get to choose the battlefields on which we're running. And this is a moment in time that we all understand is a defining moment in our nation's history. And what happens on November 6th will be the most important element over the last 2 years to determine what course our nation's going. And what's on the ballot is who we are as a country. My wife and I, we talked about this, and we said to each other a year ago, what is the way in which our humble family of four can be of most impact in the age of Trump? What is the maximum impact that we can have? We lived in a district that voted for Obama twice, a district that had 13,000 more Democrats registered than Republicans. And my congressman of this district ensured that gave every opportunity in life was now the lead architect of the Trump health care repeal, the only member of Congress from New Jersey to vote yes on that tax bill, the only member of Congress from New Jersey to co-sponsor the concealed carry reciprocity gun legislation. He's now pushing this bill, I don't know how many of you have heard about it, where he's trying to deregulate and make it easier for people to be able to get silencers for their guns. Trying to make it easier for that, and he has the goal to call it the Hearing Protection Act. I can't believe it. I really can't believe it. That's what my wife and I were thinking about. And we decided that this was our way to contribute. This was our way to serve. And actually, I think about this right now because yesterday, as I told you, my wife was on a business trip. And as soon as I heard news about retirement on the court, I called her. And I called her from my bathroom in my house where I kept the light off because I didn't want my baby to know that my baby boy that was in there because I know he'd come out. And I hid in that bathroom, talked to my wife, and I said, what is going on? I just couldn't believe the reminder of what's at stake this year in this country. And I broke down. First time in a while that I kind of broke down just thinking about what's happening right now, what's at stake. So my wife, Tammy, she brought us back to that night, a year ago when we decided to do this. She reminded me that what we said that day a year ago is we wanted to say, what in this crazy world can we control? Can we influence? What is our mode of strategic opportunity? What can we do as a family? She said there are lots of battles out there. There are. And many of you are fighting these different battles, and I will fight with you on as many of them as I can. But what's important is for us to stay focused on where we can be of impact, what control we can have. And right now for my family, that is about winning the New Jersey 3rd Congressional. This is something over the last year that we have seen come together in an incredible way. I am blown away by the energy in my district, and I want to share that with you today. Here's what I hear in New Jersey. Here's what I hear in one of these top battleground districts. I do about 3 to 6 of these types of events every single day in the district. We go all over the place, talk to as many people as possible. And I can tell you that people are terrified by this dysfunction that they see, the chaos that they see. People who voted for Trump, people who voted for Tom McCarthy. A lot of people are coming at me. I had a woman come to one of my events the other day, brought a couple of her friends, told me she's excited to be here. I asked her if she wanted a photo. She said no, because she didn't want her husband to know that she People are fighting in their own ways, standing up and taking control, and understanding what they can have, what are the things that they can do, control, and influence. Something that I thought about it just because I was listening to Jake talking. One thing I always used to tell Jake about is counter ISIS fighting. is that we have to make sure we all don't play team soccer, we all just chase the ball. And we have to figure out what our positions are. What is our strategy? How are we going to work together? And I think, for me, that lesson has been reminded to me today, over this last week, over the last few weeks. And what I can tell you is I know what role I need to play. And we've been playing an extraordinary effort here. We've now raised over $2 million on this campaign, which is unbelievable. We've been able to have a massive effort with tens of thousands of people around this country. We have over 1,200 volunteers in the district alone, over 2,000 when you take into account the broader metro area. We're going to have the largest get up and vote operation in South Jersey history. It's going to be amazing. It's having a huge impact on the ground. And as the latest polls are showing that we're at a dead heat right now in the car. And then when we get our message out, we jump to a 6-point lead. This is a race we can win. But most importantly, this is a race we must win. And I think that that's what I think about passing. I think about it because I remember just the other day we had our primary in New Jersey about 2-3 weeks ago. And I was proud to say that we doubled the Democratic turnout 4 years ago's midterm. That's what we did. It was amazing. Our Republican turnout went down 5%. We clearly have the energy on our side. But what I remember most from that moment and that day is going to the polls with my mother and watching her crying when she's coming out from having just checked the little box. I actually made sure she did it right. She was so nervous that she forgot to press the final complete button. But she was crying, and it was that moment that made me take a step back and remember what we're up to. That this is a district that gave me and my family everything. Gave my wife and my 2 baby boys. It's the district where my parents built the life that they always dreamed of. I'm the son of immigrants. My father and mother grew up in South Korea at the end of the Korean War through very difficult times. My dad grew up in an orphanage. He's a survivor of polio. My mother grew up in a poor farm family to a single mom in an area devastated by the war. Neither of them thought they would ever have a chance in life. But it was this country that took a chance on them, brought them in, gave them an education. And in New Jersey, they built a life that they could never have imagined. My dad went on to get a PhD in genetics, dedicated his whole life to try to cure cancer and Alzheimer's. My mother became a nurse, served in the great hospital systems in New Jersey. That's what New Jersey has done for us. And for my parents to have chosen this piece of America to raise their family, and to now see their son run for Congress, raising his own family down the street from where they chose to live. That was America. That was a beautiful moment for our family. I want to share that with you. The next 4 months, as I told you, is going to be incredibly difficult for all of us. And I come here today asking for your help. Sincerely and humbly asking for your help. Because I can't do this alone. I can't do this, our team can't do this just on us. And what I can tell you is that from our district to you, we know that this is the most important election that our district has ever been a part of. We know that. And we're going to do everything we can, because the way that we talk about this is that this is a year of no regrets. That this is a year where on the day after Election Day, every single one of us in the New Jersey 3rd Congressional District will be able to wake up and say, we did everything we could to get our country on a better path. That is our promise to you here. But I ask you to make that same commitment. Even though you don't live in the New Jersey 3rd, or you don't live or have a connection to a lot of these battleground districts around this country, you know that we're in it together. You know that serving your best interests and what you think you need to do to get your country on a better path means taking back the House. That for me to help give a majority to the House will help you understand and be able to achieve the kind of goals that you want. We're in this together. That's what I think about, and that's why I'm here asking for your help. I want to share one story. I've actually never shared this story really before, but since Jake said a lot of the things I was planning on saying, I'm give an impromptu speech that goes off. But this is a story I think will resonate with many of you, because many of you will have shared similar types of approaches. Something that Jake said that kind of hit me was this idea of what compelled us to do the type of work that we do. And I'm not saying what got us into running for Congress. You know that's about, protecting my kids and fighting for this district. But I want to just share with you the origin of my service to this country. So for me, I thought about working in foreign policy. I had a couple of different experiences, but there was one that really propelled me to the career path that I had, which is that I worked at the Senate Foreign Relations Committee under Senator Richard Lee. He invited me up to work with him. He had a vacancy on African issues, and I was doing a lot of work with Darfur refugees and others. So he invited me to come work. He knew I was a Democrat, I knew he was a Republican, but I deeply respected him, and I thought this was an opportunity for us to be able to work together and think about bipartisanship. When I started my first day there, I realized that I was going to be sharing in my office with another person who started the day work that exact same day. There's a tall gentleman from the State Department. Now I'll tell you, growing up in Jersey, a family that never had any ties to D.C., I never actually met someone from the State Department until that day. This is my very first U.S. diplomat that I had met. I remember him walking in and saying, "Hi, my name's Chris." And I remember him sharing our office together. We realized we had a deep love for tennis together. We became tennis partners. We did everything together for a while. And he shared all of his stories traveling around the Middle East, traveling around the world on behalf of the United States government. And this was something I was learning a lot from, because I had a lot of problems with the Bush administration that I had also worked under. But this was, right after the Abu Ghraib scandal and a lot of things that made me feel like I don't think working for the government is really what I want to do. Chris taught me otherwise. Chris taught me that there's value and there's a tremendous amount of honor in being able to serve our country. That being at the table, being in the room, being in the fight is such a huge part of being able to make change. You can't win a fight unless you're in it. And he always reminded me that it's a fight every single day. A lot of us in this room know that and recognize it. I remember he was the first person that I called when I got the call saying that I got hired at the State Department. He was the first person that I sought the advice from when I thought about going over to the White House National Security Council to be able to work there and work alongside many of you. He was a tremendous figure in my life. And I think about him constantly. And I remember it was, I guess now, 6 years ago when I remember walking into the State Department and September 12th, turning on my computer and seeing his face on the front page of the New York Times. And I realized at that moment that my dear friend, Ambassador Chris Stevens, who was my greatest mentor in my life, had been tragically killed in Benghazi. I remember the overwhelming emotion, point that I never experienced before, where I was just too overwhelmed to even be able to cry, to be able to just catch my breath. And I think about that moment a lot, because it was an experience that really reminded me what service is to this country. The kind of people that are willing to stand up and devote their life to service to this country. And for him, it was an experience where I always said, I remember a line that he always used to quote. He would always kind of shorthand that Teddy Roosevelt quote, that there's nothing greater in life than be able to have hard work worth doing. And I think about that a lot, the type of work that he did, that a lot of you did or are doing. the work that I'm trying to do, what gets us through this is that we know that this is hard work we're doing. People in my district know that this is hard work we're doing. And all of us are stepping up right now to be able to take control over our democracy in New Jersey, getting our district on a better path. And I'm really excited about it. And I hope you see in this race, I hope you see in what we're trying to do a tangible way that you can get involved. And as Jake said, you know what's at stake. You know that this is a top competitive district. You know that my opponent is someone that we need. He's a dangerous legislator that needs to be held accountable for what he's done. But I also hope you see in me the kind of next generation of leaders that we need in this country that are focused on service, that believe that it is an honorable thing to do to serve our country, that we approach this in a way that moves past the hyper-partisanship that has stagnated and held our country back from so much progress. And to be able to approach this in the way that we need, which is focus on what's best for the American people and how we can solve these incredibly difficult challenges that we face today. That's the vision of service that we're doing. And that's the vision that we need to be able to solve these other incredible problems, like to protect our Social Security and Medicare, and finding real solutions to address the opioid crisis, or be able to understand that climate change is a national security crisis, every bit as dangerous as terrorism and other threats that we face. That those are the types of discussions that I assure you we are having in New Jersey. And I know that a lot of this comes down to the last couple of weeks, these last couple of months. We're ready for this. We're ready for it, but we need your help. And here's what I ask you. I appreciate it. If you supported this campaign, thank you so much. I deeply appreciate it. It means a lot to me. And that's how we're going to be able to have the resources we need to build this. But I also ask you to think about this as that year of no regrets. That year where you think about what you're going to do and try to think about what extra you can do. Whether it's on the financial side, whether or not you're able to help spread the word, and think about 5 people who aren't in this room right now who you think want to find a tangible way to get involved and be able to change the course of this country. 5 people who you think might be interested in hearing about what we're trying to do in New Jersey and what I'm trying to build with this campaign. I ask you to reach out, let them know about today. I ask you to consider co-hosting, helping us out with future events here in DC. That's how we've been able to build this out. That's how we've been able to get so many of you here in the room today. That's how we were able to do 3 to 6 of these types of events every single day, because at every single one of these events, we often have 3, 4, 5, sometimes more people say, I want to help with the next one. So if that's something you can help us out with, harass your friends just a little bit. If you got a beautiful home, doesn't have to be as big as this one, that you want to open up to us, please let us know. If your home is super messy and you want to mess up somebody else's home, we can arrange that as well. Sam and others on my team, please come talk to us. Because as simple as it sounds, those are the things that make a big difference. It really does. This campaign has been building out one event at a time, one conversation at a time. And that's what's going to make this so powerful when we get to November 6th. So I thank you so much, everybody, for coming out here today. I deeply appreciate your time, your support, everything we can do. And what a promise I make to you is that I'm going to give this everything I got, and I need you to do the same. Thank you so much. Not too many, as I know people want to get back to the bar and the food. Please change our in your campaign. we got the support of a lot of great people. Cargo included. We were the first campaign in the entire country endorsed by Vice President Biden. We got a lot of other great support. Amy, Susan Rice, Jennifer Dufffield, a lot of people here in this room. I'm so humbled and honored by that kind of help. And we'll look forward to continuing to build it out. This is one of the most fundamental aspects of our campaign, because what I talk to people in my district about is that we can't just have better policies, we need better politics. And if you go to my website, you'll see it's right up front that I make this pledge to my district that I will be the most accountable, accessible, and transparent member of Congress that there is. That means not taking corporate PAC money. That's an important signal, it's an important sign, it's an important step to show the voters in my district whose side I'm on. And I think so much about this election comes down to that question of whose side are we on. That's why I promised my district I'm going to have daily reports out coming from my office in D.C. about who I'm meeting with, what I'm up to. If I win this, I'm sure my future staff hates this already. But I think it's important to have that transparency, to have people understand what we're up to. And the third thing is I promised my district that I would have an in-person town hall every single month. And we've actually already started that in practice. Because I think it's so important for democracy to be this, to be face-to-face. And I'm mindful of the fact that my opponent hasn't had a town hall in over 400 days. And I think that's the problem. The fundamental problem here is that the two of us, have fundamentally different perspectives of what it means to be a representative. A simple analogy here, that he's someone that's been at the head of the boardroom table his whole career. And he's been a CEO of an insurance company. He thinks he's CEO of our district. And he acts like that. Doesn't feel like he's responsible to us or needs to answer to us. He's the kind of guy, you vote for him, you give him the keys, he drives off for 2 years, comes back, tells you where he's been, and vote for him again. For me, you vote for me, or my district votes for me, yes, I get the keys, but we're in the car together. And the whole time we're talking about where we're going to get together. When we get there together. That's just a fundamental difference about how we see things. And for my opponent to have taken hundreds of thousands of dollars of money from pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies, just before he came up with this MacArthur Amendment that gutted pre-existing condition protections. I contrast that to the one town hall he did do when he used to hold town hall, is that he promised our district that he was going to take it slow on health care, that it's complicated, and that he wasn't going to vote yes on something unless it protected people with pre-existing conditions and that it didn't throw poor people under the bus. That's the promise he made to us. 4 weeks later, he wrote the MacArthur Amendment. That's how good his promise is to us. Whereas his promise to the pharmaceutical companies, to the insurance companies, to all these companies that have been supporting him right before he was the only member of Congress in New Jersey to vote yes on that tax bill, that's what his promise is to them. It's very different than how he responds and feels like he has any responsibility to his own people. That's what we're up against.
Are there any scheduled debates between the next 4 months between you and me?
Nothing scheduled yet. We'll be doing some forums together, but won't be sort of official debates. We'll probably get into that after Labor Day, I'm guessing. But I'm sure that'll happen. Yeah. Please, Ross.
I'm sorry, I had the same question.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
That's weird.
Hey, this has just been really inspiring, fantastic. So obviously your campaign is just generating a tremendous amount of momentum. People are getting excited. So of course he's now going to start ramping up his attacks. What have you noticed? And we were talking about this a little bit earlier. What have you noticed in terms of how he's changing his tactics or his attacks, and which of those are you concerned about? How are you responding? Because he's obviously getting nervous.
Yeah, no, he's definitely got the message now. We've now outraised him 9 straight months, and I think that. As I said, all the polls are showing that we're basically in a dead heat here. So he's gotten that message, and in recent weeks he's joined the Climate Solutions Caucus in Congress, even though he's got a 14% lifetime rating for the legal conservation voters. He's someone who used to support offshore drilling in the Atlantic, now is saying, "Oh no, I never said that." He's going back on all these different efforts while he's simultaneously trying to come after me and belittle my service. And I think about that as sort of a backdrop to the stories that I told you today. As I told you, I didn't plan to give the remarks that I did today, but I felt like it was something that I wanted to share. And I think it's something on my mind as he's coming after. He's trying to belittle my service to this country. He's trying to say, oh, he's too young. There's no way that he did what he did. He must be lying about it. He's calling me note-taker Andy, trying to say that I'm nothing but a note-taker in government. And thankfully, we have good people like Tony Blinken and Secretary Kerry and others that are punching him back in the face. But I think that's what we see is his willingness to just use those same tactics as if he just hired Steve Bannon to be his campaign manager, just playing around with willing to do anything it takes to be able to do this. And Jake is absolutely right. I never thought that I'd run for Congress. I never did. But I also never thought that my congressman would be the one that pushes the most dangerous piece of legislation I've ever seen in my lifetime. And so these attacks and these efforts that he's trying to do, he's already up on TV. He's been up on TV since May, and he has seen no intention to stopping that. He's going to just go straight up. He's going to continue to spend heavily. This is a guy who did what he did on health care, got the very first fundraiser from Trump for any sitting member of Congress. He was the only member of Congress in New Jersey to vote yes on that tax bill and started getting Vice President Pence's support. He voted, he was the only member of Congress in New Jersey to co-sponsor concealed carry reciprocity 4 weeks after the Las Vegas massacre, and got Mick Mulvaney and Kellyanne Conway to come and do fundraisers for him. He just had Paul Ryan out last week. We know that this is their top priority, one of their top priorities. But on our side, we have a lot of great support. We have you, we have Biden, we have others that are helping us build this up. So that's what this is going to take, is making sure that we can push back against his lies, expose him for who he is, because what he can't run away from is his record. And when people know about what he's done and reminded about it, we jump to the lead. And we need to make sure that every single person on November 6th that goes to the polling station in New Jersey 3rd Congressional District knows what the MacArthur Amendment is and is thinking about that first and foremost as they poll those letters. Puneet.
Hey, how much is foreign policy coming up in the forum that you're doing in our district?
Yeah, great question. So in my district, foreign policy and national security is a local issue. Our largest employer in the district is a joint military base, McGuire-Dix-Lakehurst. With 30,000 active duty every day that show up to work, 50,000 civilians that work at that base, 50,000 veterans in the district, one of the highest in the entire country. So this is an incredibly important issue. I get a lot of questions about what's happening in Korea. I get a lot of questions about what's happening across the board with a lot of these different issues. I get questions about cybersecurity, a lot of questions about people worried about different aspects. What I find is that there are voters that think about foreign policy a lot. I push back on these thoughts that it's not high on the list. What I've found when I've talked to and raised these issues on my own is it's that the people in my district are highly engaged on them. I think they feel more intimidated to ask questions, maybe because of a lack of familiarity or not really certain how to approach it. But when we raise up the issues, after the text message issue with the ballistic missile issue in Hawaii, people were talking about that nonstop in my district. They're clearly worried about these types of issues. And they're certainly not feeling any better off, after what's happened in recent weeks. So that's the top priority. I don't think we'll make that for us. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Andy. You're an inspiration. My question is more with your hat as a former organizer. You talked about your foreign policy world and your congressional candidate world. I think this week, for me personally, has been a real test of kind of fight or flight instincts. We're all, I think, in this room because we want to fight and leave it out on the field. But when it comes to the courts, it feels so much more helpless and it feels so out of reach. And so we will leave it out on the field for your congressional race, but your advice to us just as citizens as we see things fall apart with the courts, how do you think about the actions that we can take, knowing that the impact of what happens is going to be generations long?
Yes, no, absolutely. This kind of gets back to some of what I was saying earlier during my remarks about what is it that we can control, what are our ways of maximum influence. But what I'll say about that is that we need to make sure we don't self-select ourselves out of certain types of actions. It's important for us to continue to push ourselves beyond our own comfort zone. This is something Stacy and I think went through a lot after the November election, trying to think about when I called her and many in this room those days afterwards, saying, what can we do? And I tell you, I felt way out of my league, weighing in on a lot of these issues outside of foreign policy in those days, weeks, months after the November 2016 election. But I recognized how important it was, and that belief that I had, I told you about, that we can't assume that someone else will stand up and fight on our behalf. So what I'll tell you is that if you asked me on November 8th or 9th back in 2016 what I could control, what I could influence, I would not have told you, well, I think I can run for Congress and be able to influence my district, help take back the House. So we need to leave room for us to be open and understand that there are other paths that we might not know about. And that these are times that push us beyond that comfort zone. Whether that means write me another check, no, I'm kidding. Or about finding other communities and groups that we get fired up about. Because here's what I'll tell you, is that ultimately what is happening right now, this is not about just 2018 and 2020. We need this energy in this room, this energy in the New Jersey 3rd. We need this energy across this country to just become the new baseline of civic engagement in this country. That's what this needs to be. And I think about this a lot because, as I told you before, my very first job in politics was as a community organizer. I worked as a community organizer at the Chicago Coalition of the Homeless, and that's where I kind of cut my teeth. And it's been a while since I thought about change in that kind of operation. But here's what I know, is that one of the earliest things I ever understood from that time at the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless, and then one of the most important lessons I learned from my mentor, Chris, was that we need champions both inside and outside of government working together for common cause. That's the only way we've seen any great change in our country before. So it's not all on the members of Congress. It's not that we can flip the House, flip the Senate, take back the White House, and we'll be good. We need to all stay engaged and find our way to be able to find, the way I say it is that for us to embrace and redefine and re-engage what it means to be a citizen, not just on election day, but every day. And that is the mission for us, is to, in this day and age, remind ourselves and redefine what it means to be a citizen. That's our pledge. That's what we're trying to do leading up to November 6th. But it has to be something that we take and instill in us going forward. And that's the promise that I make to my 2 baby boys. As I told you, this is all about them and about this community that I grew up in, about giving back and fighting for their futures. And I'll tell you, yeah, it's tough being away from them. I miss them deeply, and I miss a lot of their great moments in their life. But it's something that reminds me that maybe I'm not going to win any Father of the Year awards this year. Maybe I'm not the kind of tucking them into sleep kind of dad right now, but what I'm doing is my way of trying to be the best dad to them. And that's how we try to remember, is bring it back down to the personal. Bring that down to the core of what brought you here today, what brought me here today. And that's going to be the common cause that brings us all together November 6th and beyond.
I'm Sam, I'm the finance director, the guy who takes your money. We are on the cusp right now of raising $1 million in a single 3-month quarter. We've been a part of 9 campaigns. I've never even gotten half of that. My campaign manager hasn't even gotten within $250,000 of that. I think we're going to double Tom McCarthy this quarter.
Woo!
That's the note of optimism. And this is happening, as Andy kind of speaks about in some of his other speeches, is because we are not in normal times, because we are in a time that folks feel that they have to get involved, do everything that they can. And that we need this to continue. But the note which I want to end on, and the reason why you will see my name pop up on your phone again, why I will continue to ask you for help, why if you can give another $50, another $100, another $250, is because when Tom McCarthy was first elected, he wrote himself a $5 million check and raised $100,000. This is a man who can not only get a $800,000 but the state will